The Lord is never going to call you to sacrifice something and not provide for you. Today I was reflecting upon just really life, and then what came to mind was that exact phrase that the Lord will not ask you to sacrifice something and not provide. And then I remembered Abraham and his son Isaac. When the Lord asked him to sacrifice his son, specifically he referred to Isaac because Isaac was the son that was his promise and that he longed for, and he waited for a number of years before he could finally get his promised son. And I remember the verse, well, if we read, and that's taken from Genesis chapter 22, it speaks about the whole story of Abraham taking his son and his servants to the mountain of Moriah. Well, that was what they were. That was the place that they were heading to, Moriah, and he took his son there, and the Lord asked him to sacrifice this son specifically. And then the story goes on to them going ahead, and and then up to the mountain, and then Isaac asking his dad, okay, dad, so where is the ram? Where is the lamb that we're going to sacrifice? And then Abraham told him that he would provide. And wow. And the Lord ministered to me that he's never going to ask you to sacrifice something that you love so dearly without him providing. And there is so much power in just that verse, that Abraham trusted God so much that even if God asked him to sacrifice his only son, that he knew that God would have provided whatever for him. Like, he didn't know exactly what the Lord would have provided, but he trusted and he believed. And God is saying that whenever he calls you up to that mountain, that he's always asking you to sacrifice something that is dear to your heart, and he's gonna provide. And that was what the Lord ministered to me, that he's going to provide once you walk in the obedience of God. So if God has called you to sacrifice something, whatever it may be, for me it would be something different compared to you. And the Lord ministered to me that because of your obedience, he's going to provide. That we may not know where exactly that provision is going to come from which direction, but all he wants us to do is just walk in the obedience and trust that God will provide. Sometimes we have doubts, and the enemy bring doubt our way and make us feel like, no, I don't think that I should do this, or I am doing the wrong thing, or maybe I'm making the wrong decision. But just remember that on the mountain, wherever that the Lord calls you, he is going to provide. And when he says that he's going to provide, then trust his word that he will provide it for you. And in verse 13, to the point, he took his son up to the mountain and then was preparing him for the sacrifice. And even at the lifting of his knife, that was so much obedience. Because for you to take your only son, and I always marvel at that scripture every time that I read it, for you to take your only son and then for you to take him up to the mountain to the point where you're going to take a knife and kill your only son, I mean, that is some form of obedience that some of us really need to pray from the Lord for. But Abraham decided that he trusted God so much that he was going to follow every single step, every single instruction. So the Lord told him where he was. As a matter of fact, and I think that's because the more that we trust God, is the more that he's going to continue to develop our faith. So first the Lord told him to leave his comfortable home and go to the land where he will tell him. Where are you going to, Abraham? To the land where I will tell him. So that means that Abraham was walking with God in the unknown, that he didn't know where he was going to, where his life was going to take another miraculous turn, but he trusted God. Now God brought him to that specific point in his life where he now had to sacrifice his only son. And I believe that that the reason why God chose Abraham for that task is because God trusted that even in the mix of the uncertainty, even the mix of the criteria of the stuff that God was asking Abraham, that God knew that he was still going to be obedient. And Abraham trusted God because he knew that the God that he served was faithful. Abraham understood that the character of God, and then he trusted that. So on the mountain, he's like ready and willing to sacrifice his only son. Now that's kind of crazy to me every time I think about it. But God was like, now, this is a type of obedience that I love. And I love when I instruct my children in the way that they should go, that they walk in the obedience of what I'm calling them to do. Because on the mountain, wherever I call you, I am going to provide. That Abraham didn't even know that God had already knew that he was going to walk in the obedience. And therefore, he already had the ram secluded in a particular area, that just in the nick of time that he was going to allow the ram to move or to make a sound, and Abraham would know immediately that this is the ram that I need to use now. And God is saying right now that in this moment, whatever instruction that he's calling you to do, move at the sound of God, move at his instructions, because at the mountain, that you don't know where he's going to call you yet, but at that mountain, when you are there in the obedience of God, he's going to provide. So do not be worried or concerned about what the Lord may call you to do. Continue to learn the character of God, because he's a God who is loving, and he's a God who is true to his word. And when he tells you that he's going to provide, that he's going to come for you, it doesn't matter what people may say, what people may have to, people may try to convince you otherwise, that this is kind of crazy. But trust God anyway, because at the mountain of Moriah, he's our Jehovah Jireh. He's our provider. He already has that ram secluded there for you, that at the nick of time, he's going to send the angel who's going to call you, and then you are going to be obedient and be so attentive to his voice that you will know when it's time for you to stop. So God is saying that at that mountain, he will provide. Just trust in his instructions, trust in his word, and lean not on your own understanding, because your own understanding of God and the things that he calls us to do are crazy. But trust that he will provide for you, because that's just who he is. He's our Jehovah Jireh. And if he calls you to make a move, to sacrifice anything, to do something in obedience, it's your obedience that is what is going to unlock the blessing that he already has in store for you.